The Information Technology and Government Affairs Committee will now come to order. We'll begin by starting with announcing that item number 4, we'll put that item over for 2 weeks. Next, we'll go to item number 5.
For item 5 was before you as a motion by Council Members Perry and Parks. This is relative to the instruction for the Department of General Services to report on the costs and resources needed to properly maintain the grounds of the Police Administration Building.
Thank you. This motion was put forth by Councilmember Perry, seconded by Councilmember Parks, and the concern is how can we bring the maintenance of the new Police Administrative Building up to the standard that we should. I was going to use the word could, but how could we? That's the point. We have various departments that handle maintenance in the city of Los Angeles we've cut their budgets back drastically. So now, unlike before, there is very little opportunity for departments to absorb or add on responsibilities without it impacting other areas of their responsibilities as well. Go ahead.
Okay. David Pascal from the Department of General Services. Councilman, I believe the motion specifically addresses the responsibility for landscape maintenance or the maintenance of the softscape. Mm-hmm. And the Department of General Services has never been budgeted, nor have we ever had the expertise, the equipment, the tools, the vehicles, or the proper classifications to maintain landscaping. So we have never been responsible for landscaping in the Department of General Services.
So who's been handling landscaping over past years?
It's my understanding that Rec and Parks has been responsible for that.
Mm-hmm. Tom Brennan, Facilities Manager for the LAPD. The Department of Recreation and Parks was never budgeted to maintain the Police Administration Building. We actually have that situation with several of the new stations that have been built under Proposition Q. The Topanga Station, Hollenbeck, Rampart, Olympic,
Mission,
the Emergency Operations Center, all of those facilities that were added are bomb squad facilities. None of them have been budgeted for landscape services. Recreation and Parks has worked with us as the best they could to do certain types of maintenance. Currently, they are doing the lawn mowing and helping us maintain the sprinkling system at the Police Administration Building. The rest of the landscaping activities that are being done there are being done through a combination of the one person that I have on staff who is a maintenance and construction helper, and a court-referred volunteer if he can get one, and a community group from the neighborhood council that comes the first Saturday of every month and takes the side of the building and basically does the landscaping for us. General Services custodial crew does help us with maintaining the outside of the building as far as the hardscape areas, sweeping, emptying the trash cans as best they can as well. But it is certainly a difficult circumstance that we find ourselves in.
Okay. Is there anybody here to make public comment on item number 5? I don't see any public comment cards for item number 5. Okay. The public comment on item number 5 is now closed. So with that, what we'll do is we'll continue the motion and direct the CAO to report back on the costs and resources needed to maintain landscaping services at the Police Administrative Building, and also to report back on any alternative sources of funding or programming that might be able to help us mitigate this need. Okay. Thank you.
Just for clarification, you are keeping that item in committee. You're continuing it in committee.
Okay. Now we'll go to item number 1.
For item 1, the city administrative officer has submitted a report, and there's also an ordinance. This is relative to the sale of a portion of city-owned property located at 3410 South La Cienega Boulevard, and this will be sold to the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority for the on-site construction of a 5-story parking structure for the Exposition Corridor Light Rail Transit Project. The Transportation Committee has recommended approval of the CO recommendations, and the item is also referred to Budget and Finance.
Good afternoon, Councilmember. The Department of General Services requests authority for the direct sale of a portion of city-owned property located at 3410 South Los Cienego Boulevard in Council District 10 to the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority in the amount of $3,265,000. MTA is requesting to purchase the property, which is the northwest portion of the city property, for the construction of a 5-story parking structure for the Exposition Corridor Light Rail Transit. As part of the sale negotiations, MTA will reimburse the city approximately $407,000 for the relocation and redesign costs of an air treatment facility. The city will reimburse MTA for relocation costs of the existing water and sewer lines in the amount of approximately $500,000. Therefore, the adjusted negotiated sale price is $3,172,915. The CO recommends approval of the proposed sale. Funds will be deposited into the Sewer Construction Maintenance Fund. There is no impact on the general fund. Department representatives are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Is there anybody here from the public that would like to make a comment on item number 1? Anybody here from the public to make comment on item number 1? I do not see any public comment cards before me for item number 1. That being the case, public comment on item number 1 is now closed. So, being that we do not have a quorum of this committee, it's the recommendation of the chair that we approve the CIO report and recommendations and move this item out of committee. Okay. We now move to item number 2.
On item 2, there is a resolution relative to the city's position to support Senate Bill 29, which would modify current state law regarding automated photo red light programs if the bill is amended to improve the enforcement ability of unpaid citations, including the requirement that courts notify the state of unpaid citations.
Good afternoon. John Deering with the Chief Legislative Analyst. The subject resolution addresses SB 29, which is proposed state legislation that would impact automated photo red light systems. During Council's recent consideration of whether or not to continue with the photo red light program, the resolution was introduced to explore potential amendments to SB 29 that would improve local jurisdictions' enforcement ability regarding unpaid citations. Currently, SB 29 has passed the state Senate. It's pending in the state assembly. What I can do is give you an overview of the provisions of SB 29 as currently proposed, and then address a little bit more the proposed amendment.
Thank you.
SB 29, the major provisions: agencies would be required to post signs within 200 feet of an intersection where a system is operating. Agencies must develop uniform guidelines for screening and issuing violations and establish procedures to ensure compliance consistent with current state law. Agencies must make and adopt a finding of fact that the system is needed at a specified location for reasons related to safety. Agencies would be prohibited from considering revenue generation beyond the actual cost of operating the system when considering whether to install and operate photo red light systems.
Let me ask for a clarification of that. The motivation of a jurisdiction, according to the way this Senate bill is written right now, they're saying that the motivation shall not be for revenue generation beyond the cost of the program or the site, but it doesn't prohibit a local authority, once they've gone down that road, if they do in fact have income beyond the cost, it doesn't prohibit them from collecting those funds, correct?
That's the way I understand it.
That's the way I understand it as well. So in other words, they don't want local jurisdictions to utilize this as an opportunity to say, where can we put these where they'll have the most income to our jurisdiction? They need to be considering public safety, and the fact of the matter is, whether or not it generates income, they should be agnostic toward that at the time that they pick the site.
Correct. And I think this provision specifically is actually reinforcing what's already currently part of state law, which is much more explicit, which says that local agencies may not pay the vendor as either a percentage of gross revenues derived from those citations or based on the number of citations that are generated on the intersection. So
Of any program, it doesn't, not just photo red light, just in general.
the provision I'm referring to is specific to photo red light, as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
There may be other similar statutes. So, yeah, with respect to what's currently in SB 29, yes, I think that's just reinforcing some of the current restrictions regarding revenue generation. Continuing on, it requires a notice to appear, which is also considered to be the citation or ticket, include a series of information that outlines the due process and methods by which the citation can be challenged, how to contact both the agency and the vendor, for either to appeal or for further resolution. And then lastly, it permits but does not require the issuing agency and the vendor to issue courtesy notices to the registered owner of the vehicle or the alleged violator prior to issuing a notice to appear, with the same information as far as how to contact either the agency or the vendor. As far as the proposed amendment to SB 29, it's been reported that as certain citations go unpaid, that there isn't a means to pursue greater enforcement action once they are in the hands of the court system and the violator has not paid the ticket. There is the current state law specifies a process that may unfold, which would be to transmit that information to the state DMV for further enforcement action, such as a hold on the driver's license. Right now, that process is not being fulfilled. It's also not actually made a specific requirement to do so. So
that's not being fulfilled by the DMV. That's not being fulfilled by the DMV across the state or in certain counties or certain jurisdictions.
The information as it resides with the citation information and the alleged violator information resides with the court system, and that is not being transmitted to the state DMV. There's a state law outlines the process, but it is not made a requirement that that process actually be fulfilled. The resolution, as stated, seeks to actually change that into a requirement so that the citations can have that subsequent enforcement action somewhere down the road. If it's a renewal on a driver's license, then it does provide that additional step in the process to collect that additional revenue and adjudicate the ticket.
So that's as SB 29 is written today, or is that one of the amendments we'd like to see it?
That's the amendment that the subject resolution contemplates to specifically amend SB 29. Right now, it does not address, and that would be a provision to the vehicle code right now. There isn't a provision that addresses the vehicle code. So there also have been discussions on potential revenue impacts. This was very similar to a bill introduced in the last session that was ultimately held in the suspense file in the Appropriations Committee on the Assembly side. The state analysis has not identified a specific dollar amount, but they have said that it is likely to be a negative fiscal impact to the extent that these restrictions may compel local authorities or agencies to review their camera systems and determine whether or not they would be sustainable going forward with the new requirements. The number hasn't been identified, but the analysis in the CLA report states that with such an amendment to the bill and the likely positive revenue impacts, that may make it more tenable for the passage in the state legislature.
It's my understanding that the current photo red light programs, as you look at them accumulatively across the state of California, there is a revenue generated to the state and also to local jurisdictions. That being the case, is it your interpretation, the way as the bill is written right now, should this bill become law, does each jurisdiction have to reevaluate their current photo red light programs intersection by intersection? Or in other words, are they grandfathered and then any new photo red light intersection implementation needs to follow the SB 29 requirements, or would it be retroactive?
You know, I'd have to double check specifically. My understanding is that for certain provisions, there is a grandfathering in. With respect to the finding of fact, there may be a review that is required of all local agencies.
Yes.
Typically, when it comes to legislation, it's not retroactive unless there's a provision that provides for retroactivity. And the council member having come from the state, I would presume that, that's sort of standard practice. We did not see in the bill that it was intended to be retroactive. We would presume that what the bill would intend to do is that on a go-forward basis, if there are new contracts, that are implemented, new intersections that are going to be where photo red light is going to be applicable, that the provisions of the bill would require that there be a public safety finding made by the legislative body. We have had discussions with the city attorney about the language in the bill, and the city attorney, frankly, is not uncomfortable relative to any significant changes that may result from its implementation. So for that reason, we're recommending support, and that the only change that we're recommending is that it be amended to provide for the change in the wording of the applicable vehicle code section to change the wording from may to shall.
And then changing it from may to shall, does that, could that be interpreted as a mandate, state mandate?
That would definitely be a mandate, as John had mentioned. I think LAPD has done a very good job with respect to surveying other jurisdictions who have photo red light programs, and the differentiation between the LA County Superior Court and the other jurisdictions is that the other jurisdictions, in fact, have transmitted information to the DMV for follow-up action. LA County apparently has a different philosophical approach. Their interpretation is that because the withhold would be on the registered owner, the LA County Court does not believe that that is a fair application of the law. But, in terms of parking citations, we in fact do put a hold on the registered owner regardless as to who had committed violation with respect to parking citations. So in that regard, we think that the interpretation, frankly, would be consistent, and I think changing the vehicle code section would provide for consistency of enforcement.
So it appears that LA County courts seem to look at parking violations different than they look at photo red light when it comes to the registered owner of the vehicle.
For parking citations, that is administered by the City of Los Angeles. So state law does allow enforcement by the local jurisdiction. The vehicle code is very specific with respect to the administration of the program and its interface with the state to be under the court. That is one of the issues that I think Councilmember Parks had asked that we look into and had asked for a report back to Budget and Finance. But the wording of the state law is very clear that we cannot assume the responsibility for contacting the DMV, similar to what we do with parking citations.
And Councilmember, to address a question you had previously on the date-specific provisions, in looking at the bill here, they have two for requiring governmental agencies with systems in place prior to enactment of the bill to develop uniform guidelines and procedures by January 1st, 2013, and then for systems installed after January 1, 2012, the requirement for adopting a finding of fact that the system is needed at wherever the location may be. That provision would only be for systems installed after January 1, 2012.
Okay. So it's a hybrid of a grandfathering, but it does give an element of responsibility for them to re-justify pre-existing facilities. Okay. So that's an explanation of the amendments that was asked for by the council to SB 29?
With respect to the resolution, and as far as I'm aware, on behalf of the council at this point, yes.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, thank you. Is there anybody here to speak on item number 2? I don't see any public comment cards on item number 2 for me. Okay, therefore, item number 2, public comment is now closed. So with that, it will be a recommendation of the chair that we adopt the resolution and move it forward. Thank you. Thank you for your reports. What items are left on the agenda?
3. Item 3.
So we're down to just item 3.
That will be a city administrative officer report and communication from the city attorney, as well as an ordinance relative to adding Article 20 to Chapter 1 of Division 10 of the Los Angeles Administrative Code. This is regarding contracting with businesses based in or with headquarters in the state of Arizona. And this item has also been referred to audits and government efficiency, as well as budget and finance committees.
Okay, thank you. Any status on Councilmember Zine? Not able to make it? Okay. All right. Thank you. Please proceed.
Good morning, Council Member. My name is Laurel Leitner. I'm from the City Attorney's Office, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have about the draft ordinance that we transmitted to your body.
Yes. Okay. We've gone over that ordinance. Do we have a person representing Councilmember Reyes here? Councilmember Reyes initiated the request of the City Attorney's Office that this ordinance be drafted. So now that it's been, it's in a draft form at this point in time, I'd like you to please state for the record what the position is of Mr. Reyes and whether or not what the City Attorney has drafted so far is in concurrence with what was requested by Legislator Reyes. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cardenas. Tony Perez with Councilmember Reyes' office. When the draft ordinance came out, we contacted the City Attorney's Office and we let them know that we did have some concerns in the manner in which it was drafted. And since that time, we actually have met with the City Attorney's Office and expressed some of those concerns. We looked at the draft ordinance as exactly that, as a draft. And in working with the City Attorney's Office, they concurred that there are some of our concerns that we shared with them that can be addressed, and we're grateful that your office was great in bringing it to your committee this quickly. We would just like to have a little bit longer time, a little bit more time, if you will, to work with the City Attorney's Office, with your office, of course, to put forward an ordinance that we think is appropriate with the intent of the original resolution that I believe that the Councilmember Reyes had when he first initiated it a little bit more than a year ago.
Where do we anticipate, which committees, Edo, do we anticipate seeing this ordinance besides this one? Budget and Finance?
And audits, for some reason. It was referred to audits as well.
It was referred to audits and Budget and Finance. Okay. One of the aspects of the draft that I'd like the City Attorney's Office to clarify how that was delineated or where that came from was the based in, I think, as it's described, as whether or not a company is based in Arizona.
The policy discussed, the policy that you adopted discussed two different issues, headquartered in and based in, and the language, both words were used in the policy. And so what this draft does is give you the opportunity to consider defining both headquartered and based in. It is completely a policy decision, however, and if you wanted to, for example, suggest that based in be defined differently from the way it is in this current draft, that's definitely possible. Headquartered in was fairly easy to define because we found a definition in the law, but essentially you can apply the policy how, in the manner that you see fit, and it does not have to be consistent with the language that you adopted originally. In other words, the policy could change as a result of adopting this ordinance.
Question to Mr. Reyes' representative. Is it the intent of Councilmember Reyes that we go with a headquartered in Arizona or a based in, or both? Because right now we have, it appears the way it's drafted, we have both. We have headquartered, which again is probably easier to identify and qualify and quantify. But when it comes to based in, right now, it seems to be written saying that based in includes a level of employees in the state of a total of 50 employees in the state of Arizona, I presume, or more. Now, the reason why that caught my attention is, for example, a company like Wells Fargo. Correct. It's my understanding Wells Fargo is not headquartered in Arizona, so they don't qualify for the headquartered issue. Yet at the same time, they definitely have over 50 employees in the state of Arizona.
Correct.
So that means that they don't meet the qualification of being headquartered, but they certainly, without question, meet the qualification of being based in. And then we have AT&T, we have all kinds of companies that we do business with, that a small fraction of their business and or employee base are in and around Arizona. Yet, I mean, we could be talking about a company that has 100,000 employees and they have 500 in Arizona, which sounds like a lot, but when you look at it relative to us impacting our ability to do business with them, then we're causing ourselves, I think, we're getting away from the intent. Go ahead.
And I would agree with you, sir. And that was part of our discussion with the city attorney's office. And, those examples, there's many of those examples out there. We're trying to, and therein has been the problem, if you will, trying to be able to create an ordinance that's not only enforceable, but is something that wouldn't hurt local businesses. It certainly will impact them. There's the possibility it would impact local businesses. We just don't know what that number would be. You're absolutely correct. 50 employees is a threshold, but we saw that number as something that we can speak with the city attorney about and how we could better define that particular term, based in. But originally what was happening was it was that gray area of based in versus headquartered that the councilman was seeing as too much of a gray area that departments were using as a method perhaps not to enforce what we believe was the intent of the boycott. And that's what we were emphatic about with the city attorney's office, that if we can better define those terms, then we could close that loophole, if you will. It's just been a matter of how we're going to determine those. And so that's where we're at right now.
Now, personally, I see a big difference between a resolution showing an intent to support or not support what might be going on outside of our jurisdiction to make a point. It's another thing for us to write an ordinance that we need departments and staff and the city as a whole needs to follow, and there needs to be a certain amount of strictness and adherence to that ordinance. Yet at the same time, I'm trying to figure out how do we determine in this particular case, when it comes to the Arizona issue, which the onset of all this activity was SB 1070 that was signed by their governor, that subsequently, from my understanding, has been thrown out by the courts. However, an ordinance like this, when does it apply, and for how long does it apply?
Yes, sir. And in the resolution itself, if I recall correctly, I think we put in the resolution that we would like for the boycott to be intact until the SB 1070 is repealed. And I believe what the courts did is they actually enjoined it. I'm not sure if that's the correct term, from actually taking effect, but the law itself has not been repealed.
Yeah, but technically speaking, they may never repeal specifically SB 1070. They may even pass or implement laws in Arizona that we might even applaud or not, but yet the repeal of 1070 is still, that hasn't taken place. So that means if we follow the language of the resolution and assume that the ordinance will continue until that time, if it ever occurs, then we basically have an ordinance that applies to Arizona 5 governors from now. Obviously, the council can always change an ordinance by action of the council, but at the same time, why wouldn't we identify for ourselves as a policy body as to when the end of this is necessary?
And I would absolutely agree with you. I'm sure the council member would too, would as well. And again, that would be for the determination of the council. I think from Councilmember Reyes' perspective, the impact of 1070 is still very real in the state of Arizona. Now, the term "very real" it can be defined differently. I think for my boss, I think he would probably be he would be able to define it a lot better than I would on his behalf. But I think if the council in the future would determine that a boycott is no longer necessary, then I'm certain that it would be up to the council to make that decision. But I think until that time, I think just from my boss's, Mr. Reyes' perspective, it would just be important to have something that's there that's currently enforceable. And if in the context of the ordinance we create some kind of flexibility, an end date of some kind, and I'm certain that we can include that in the ordinance.
Also, it appears that in the draft of the ordinance, it contains various exemptions. One of them is competitive bids, amendments, modifications, renewals, etc., sole source contracts, disqualification of all but a single bidder, etc. So the list goes on. Yes, go ahead.
I can respond to that concern. I can tell you that the source of these exemptions is basically all of the other ordinances that we have, social policy ordinances that we have adopted in the past. Some of these are required by law, and others of them, your body has determined that it's in the best interest of the city to apply them. So we thought we would give you the broad range to look at. And then we can, for example, currently the way this is drafted, many of the exemptions would be performed by the awarding authorities, and therefore council would not see any of the contracts that were not required to go to council, and council would only have the ability to grant exemptions subject to the ordinance for contracts that are awarded by council. It's very easy to, for example, make council the determining body so that anytime an exemption is requested and there's a discretionary ability, if that discretion could be at council's determination. So that's one thing that could change.
And Councilman, if I can just interrupt for a moment, and those were the kinds of conversations that we were talking about. As a matter of fact, those items that you've raised were exactly the items that our office raised with the city attorney's office, the issues of exemptions, the issues of the competitive bid. I think my boss was quoted as saying, what exactly can we boycott with all of these exemptions? I think that was one of my Mr. Reyes's perspectives when he first saw the ordinance, and I think that's really one of the reasons that we thought that we needed to actually go back and look at the draft and take a look at these kinds of issues, and so that's where we're at right now.
Okay. Well, there's no question that this is in draft form, not based on the job that the city attorney's office did, but just based on the fact that the policy body needs to wrap their arms around this and then determine where we're going to draw the line in the various places that this ordinance would require us to draw the line, as to not only what our intent is, but what the final version of what we're going to hold ourselves to as a city. I don't see this as an item that's ready to be voted out of committee per se, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to hold back the work of the budget committee and also audits as well.
It's obviously your prerogative, but traditionally, if something is not fully ready to go to the next level, the first committee holds it and then sends it forward, but obviously it's your prerogative to either keep it or send it forward.
And we're absolutely comfortable with that, sir. I mean, keep it in your committee, because you're absolutely correct. It needs work, and you're absolutely correct, and it's really not ready. I think we would all agree that it's simply not ready to be moved forward, and we're absolutely comfortable it staying here with you.
And even though my fiduciary responsibility to the people of Los Angeles and my responsibility as a council member doesn't end with my chairmanship of this committee and the policy matters that this committee focuses on, but the fact that it's going to the budget committee and audits committee, I have to assume that they will ask specific questions pertinent to their jurisdiction and responsibilities within those committees as well. So at this time, I would want to make sure that this comes back to this committee in its more final form before we have a vote on it in this committee. Yes.
Hi, Councilman. I just wanted to mention that the Budget and Finance Committee is going to be considering the referral of your motion with respect to the photo red light contract extension, and certainly there are several issues that are interrelated to that, and this ordinance is a critical component of that. I think that certainly, it's at the committee's pleasure, but I believe that there is some level of interest in wanting to move all of these items forward so that council can consider all of these items before the end of the month. That being the case, we already have a tentative plan for the possible extension of the contract in your motion scheduled in Budget and Finance Committee on July the 18th. Maybe there's a possibility that there could be a joint meeting of possibly all three committees, given the fact that Councilmember Zine is chair of AGE. But prior to that, our office could certainly coordinate a meeting with the appropriate individuals to see whether we could develop a series of recommendations that could then be presented to the joint committees on July the 18th. I would think that would be more expeditious rather than holding this item in committee.
But one of my concerns is that it appears that there's a lot of detail that needs to be fleshed out in this ordinance, and I would hope that if we tried to keep with such an aggressive timeline, but so many details needed to be worked on, hopefully we could do that. I'm not in favor of holding things up for the sake of holding them up, and I'm constantly trying to be mindful of the calendar. We've been joined by Councilmember Zine, and therefore we do have a quorum of this committee. Councilmember Zine, we are on item number 3. Do you have any questions this time?
No. Have you done, what have you completed so far?
All the other items.
Concur on all the items. Okay. So you've done 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, okay. Yep. I've reviewed those. And you're on, say, number 3?
Yeah, we're on item number 3 right now. Okay. So I appreciate the outline of of the possibility of having a joint or triple committee hearing. Yet at the same time, those are kind of difficult to do because then you tend to extend into, in some cases, many as 6 members of the council. It's hard to get all the calendars together, and then to get 3 chairpersons' calendars together. Again, not impossible, but it has proven to be difficult. So that being the case, right now it appears that probably the most likely date to try to pull these 3 committees together would be the 18th, which is a Monday, 18th of July, which is a Monday.
Correct, because your motion was referred to Budget and Finance, so that was why the July 18th date was established. And also, I think, the chair was interested in having that item heard on the 18th so that it could then be scheduled for council either that week or the following week, but certainly before July the 31st. My suggestion of our office coordinating a meeting obviously would have participation of the staff of the key representatives to get input from your office, as well as chair of AGE, as well as the chair of Budget and Finance.
Okay, so what actions would we take today in order, what was is the most logical action we would take if we were going to try to move this to the joint or triple committee hearing opportunity?
What has been done traditionally is to hold the item here, address any outstanding issues as Ms. Gibson has recommended, and then come back with hopefully more final recommendations that can actually move forward to council for action. Obviously, the other 2 committees can choose to have a hearing on their own or do the triple, as she has recommended, or even waive consideration if their concerns have been addressed. But at this point, it's totally up to you. You want to send the item forward, but it sounds like there's still a lot of outstanding issues.
There's a lot of outstanding issues that are pertinent to this particular committee's jurisdiction. So what I'll ask of my colleague, Councilmember Zine, is that we keep this in committee and then notify the other 2 chairpersons of the other 2 committees, as mentioned, to try to align a committee hearing of the 3 committees, and we're shooting for July 18th. Are both of those committees, Edo, interested in hearing the red light item too, or just the Budget and Finance?
Just Budget and Finance is for total red light, specifically the ordinance specific to Arizona, Budget, Finance, IT, and AGE, unless AGE is open to waiving.
Okay, so on this item number 3, we'll hold it in committee and attempt to schedule it with the other 2 committees, and we're shooting for July 18th. Okay.
When did we submit that paperwork on number 3?
About 2 Fridays ago.
Not years ago.
Oh, originally, sir? The original resolution, I believe, was April of last year.
It's taken that long to get this?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Well, this is an ordinance. The resolution was the first debate.
It took that long to get the ordinance drafted?
Yes.
Does it normally take that long? I'm just asking. It seems like an incredibly long time to get an ordinance.
It did take a long time, and I'm very sorry for that.
I'm not blaming you. I'm just inquiring. Seems it would be done. It's over a year. Okay. Just seems like a long time. Well, it is a long time. Okay.
Well, now we have a little bit tighter time frame as we're attempting to approach with. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And also on the previous item of the photo red light camera item, this committee will also look to schedule a hearing with this committee, ITGA, and the Budget Committee on that item as well.
At this time, that particular item has only been referred to your committee, but the other committees can certainly request the additional referral from the council president.
It was already referred to audits, according to what was mentioned in council.
That's not what the file reflects, but we can take care of it.
Check with Mr. Garcetti's office. I'm talking about
This one was
the
to all three. The item number 3 was to all three.
Correct.
Number 2 was to 2 committees, I understand. The 3 committees?
What the file in front of me shows is that it was only referred to ITGA, but it does not preclude you from requesting the additional referral from the council
So you say it
president.
was referred to
ITGA,
This one, yeah.
the photo red light.
Not audits.
No, not on it.
No.
Okay, well, we need to verify that because as I understand it was also referred to audits. Number 2.
Well, we'll get that clarification. We'll look at the record and see if it was referred to audit. Okay. All right.
Mrs. Gibson?
I'm sorry. Just for clarification, sir, are you referring to item number 2 in the analysis of SB 29? Or are you talking
Well,
about,
not
are you,
the photo red light, not so much the analysis, but the photo red light situation.
Yeah,
And that's
on
different.
Item number 2 was referring to the actual resolution that's
All right.
submitted in.
Okay. I was referring
We're taking a
to
position
the
on
photo red light.
the extension of the,
The
Yeah,
contract.
photo red
the
light
contract.
was referred directly to budget from the
So
floor.
that's different, obviously, than number 2.
right.
Yeah,
and-
this one specifically deals with the
Okay,
bill.
All right, okay.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So with that, is there anybody here to speak on item number 3 from the public? I do not have any public comment cards on item number 3. Seeing and hearing no one come forward on item number 3 for public comment. Public comment is now closed. So with that, that's the action on this item as announced earlier. Okay. That concludes all 5 items on the agenda. Is there anybody here for general public comment? General public comment is now open in this committee. Seeing no one come forward, I do not have any public comment cards on general public comment. General public comment is now closed.